Hello again. In this video, I'm going to go over this homework problem from section 2.1. Now in this problem, they give us this frequency distribution table, and they want us to identify several things. So the first thing they want us to identify is the lower class limits and the upper class limits. Now these are called classes. The first class goes from 15 to 24, and then the next one goes from 25 to 34, and so on. Now in this class, the lower limit is the 15 and the upper limit is the 24. So the lower limits for this frequency distribution table are 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, and 75. Whereas the upper class limits are 24, 34, 44, 54, 64, 74, and 84. Okay, so the next thing we're supposed to identify is the class width. Now the class width is the distance between two consecutive lower limits, like 25 and 15. So 25 minus 15 is 10. Or you can also think of it as the distance between two consecutive upper class limits, so like 34 and 20. The distance between those two numbers is also 10. Now, a common mistake is to identify the class width as being the distance between the lower class limit and the upper class limit. But that's not what the class width is. So it's not 24 minus 15, which would be 9. It's actually 25 minus 15, which would be 10, or 34 minus 24, which is also 10. So be careful not to make that mistake. All right, next we're supposed to identify the class midpoints. So the first class goes from 15 to 24. If you want to find the midpoint of that class, what you do is you add the lower class limit to the upper class limit, and then you divide that by 2 to get the midpoint of the class. And so the midpoint for this first class would be at 19.5. Now, of course, you can continue to do this for each class. So the next one, you would take 25 and add that to 34, and then divide that by 2 to get the midpoint of this class, which is 29.5. But here's where the class width comes in handy. Now that we know the class width is equal to 10, once you identify one class midpoint, then all you need to do is add or subtract 10 from that number to get the other class midpoints. So for example, we know the first class midpoint is 19.5, and so if we could just continue to add 10 to that number, we'll continue to get the class midpoints of the other classes. So you can see the next one is 29.5 as we found here, but then the next one after that is 39.5, which is 10 more than the previous one. And so if you just continue to add 10 to this, you'll get all the class midpoints for each of the classes. Okay, next we're supposed to identify the class boundaries. Now the class boundaries are numbers in between the upper class limit of one class and then the lower class limit of the next consecutive class. So for example, 24 is the upper class limit for this class. The next class has a lower class limit of 25. The boundary is the number in between those two numbers. So if we take 24 and add it to 25, and then divide that by 2, that is the class boundary between these two classes. And once again, once you find one class boundary, you can find the other class boundaries because they differ by the class width. Okay, so the next one will be at 34.5, 10 more, and then 10 more will be 44.5, that would be the next one, and so on and so forth. Now you can see once you get to 74.5, that is the boundary between 74 and 75, but there is one more boundary after 84. When you add 10 more to this 74.5, you get 84.5. Likewise, 24.5 is the boundary between 24 and 25, but there's also a class boundary before 15, and so to find it, you would just subtract 10 from 24.5, and so the class boundary there would be 14.5. So those are all the class boundaries. Okay, so the last thing we have to do here in this problem is identify the number of individuals included in the summary. And so to find that, you just have to add up all the frequencies in this table. So I'm just going to add up all these numbers, 31 plus 33 plus 14 plus 3 plus 4 plus 2 and then plus 1. And so you can see there were a total of 88 individuals in this particular summary. Okay, so I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.